Well, I think we've got some final assembly going on here. There's a few things yet to be done and straightened around, but everything's laid out and planned. We threw a coat of powder coat on everything, which I say everything, there's not a whole lot. I didn't do any of my aluminum castings, but the main frame, the overarm, and then the two little universal joints. I guess we're going to call them a universal joint. We can call them whatever we want. But anyway, here's the main frame powder coated. I've already wiped everything down with acetone, so we're good and clean. Almost everything. I haven't done our main shaft yet. So I've got our main shaft here. And now that I say that, let me come back in a few minutes because I'm going to go ahead and I did not Loctite my adjustment bolts on here, and I'm going to Loctite them permanently in. So I will be back in just a minute. Alright, now we threw a little Loctite, double checked our adjustments here. Now let's see if we can't get it assembled. So here's our little chute. It goes in here someplace along the way. We'll have to align it later, but get this part of the assembly in. And we need our little adjustment cap here. Now I've already fitted all the screws. Now before I do this, I'm going to go ahead and just use some forma gasket on the bottom of these just to help seal them a little bit. I'm not going to worry about putting a proper gasket on or silicone. I do want to be able to take it apart if I need to. So hopefully we've got this all fitted up to where it's right. Probably should put a pair of gloves on for this, but I guess we won't worry about it too awful much. If we can't wipe out all the extra crap off of it, so they don't make too much of a mess. We'll get this anchored down real quick so that we don't have actually, I think I can start it right here. Leave this loose until we get the bearings and the shaft aligned and tensioned. That way we can make sure we're centered up. Okay. Shaft goes back through there just like that. Let's go ahead and put our back bearing on. And I washed these bearings up, both of them in the ultrasonic cleaner. And for those that don't know, these are the bearings we're using. Proper way to grease up your bearings. And when you wash them down, and I learned this technique way back when I was working in a truck shop. Did that for several years, so commercial over-the-road stuff, so we did a lot of wheel bearings. And packing them up, you know, we'd wash them in the solvent tank, then the new guys would think it would be really neat to take your air hose and really watch that bearing spin. Well, you might as well throw it away because you've ruined your bearing. So don't spin them. You know, you can blow them out, but don't let them freewheel. So proper way without a bearing press or a lubricator is you just put your grease in the palm of your hand. And I'm just using the general purpose lithium grease here since I'm going to inject it, and just run it down until you get grease popping out the top of your bearing. And work all the way around until you get it well lubricated. And pretty soon you got that grease oozing out the top of the bearings. So that at least gets them well lubed until you've got them run in and grease them again. And just work all the way around your bearing. There your bearing's packed. Run that one in. Clean off as much as you can. Actually, I might as well pack the other one while I'm right here. There we go. And our washer goes on. And then our manufactured nut. And the bottom one tightens down tight. Because it's set. Top end's where we set the preload, or a bearing adjustment, however you want to call it. Think about that. And we can go ahead and tighten down our set screws in there. We'll go ahead and run it in like that and then see if we need to make any adjustments. Now, I'm going to leave it that tight until we run it a little bit, and then we'll have to go back and tension that, let it seat in a little bit. Okay, for the bottom cap, what I did was we drilled and tapped it for a greaser. And it's a 1/4 28 greaser, and we've already fitted this one, so we can go ahead and put a little sealant on it. Set right on there like that. Oh, I kind of messed up. I was going to fill that one with the grease. That's alright. We'll fill it with a grease gun here after a while. It's got enough to run it in when we when we run it. Okay, and I did the same thing on the top piece. I added a greaser. I did it into the side because it will grease right off of this side. And I'm going to build a shroud around here to protect that universal joint so nobody gets their fingers in the way. But I'll just put a hole in the shroud on this side so I can run a grease gun in. We can take our upper threaded half of our coupler, about one thread off of being flush, and that should be about right. And here in my pile of stuff, we are going to have the 2 set screws and our keyway right there. So our key will slide right down in there. I guess it's a key and not a keyway. I've still not finished my chute. I've cleaned it up, but I've got to get some pipe glue and we'll smooth it down, match it together, and then blend it a little bit more on our junction here. And I'm probably going to add a little bit of a shroud up here at the back, so when I dump sand in, it doesn't just fly on out the back if I'm a little overly aggressive on putting it down in there. Okay, so there's that part. Now, the next thing to go on is going to be our rubber shroud here. And we'll see if we can work it back up in here. Actually, let's put our two of these ugly little bolts in here. Clear down to here. Go. There again, these will get nylocks put on here. Now our rubber shroud can go on here just like this. This is where it begins getting interesting, trying to get everything lined up and installed. relatively easy so far. Okay. These will all go up through here. I was going to weld a couple of chain links right on the bottom here, and I actually had them installed. I was just finished welding them up when it occurred to me, and I was doing the finish weld on them, when it occurred to me that I had to be able to slide my bottom unit over it and they protruded out too much. So what I'm going to do is, since I've got a bolt right here on each side, I'm just going to make a little adapter to either bolt a link onto or just a little tab so that I can snap in a little carabiner or something like that to hold it in place. And I'll do that on both sides, and that'll work just as well. Now I may have to go back and put a little brace along there to align those two pieces, but if we need to do that, we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. Okay. And there's the way it looks from the front. Just like that. There again, probably a couple little carriage bolts from the inside, something to hold that. Alright, now, and of course our motor will mount up on top, and we've got our hanger bracket for that, and that's powder coated up. But where we're at right now is, let's turn this upside down because it's going to be easier to install this with it upside down. That's too tall. I'll set it right here. Okay, now our little handle assembly. This is what we pretty much profile it with, and this of course may change a little bit as time goes on. I said I wanted to kind of mount a switch down on the bottom. Well, this is what I came up with. And what I've done is I just bobbed out this in the milling machine. With it inverted, I went ahead and slotted out the bottom to accept the switch, and then I routed a cable channel. So this cable will actually run out and then back up this side, I guess is the way it goes. So we're looking at it from the bottom. This should slide on right over the top. So this is what we got. Yeah, looks like my hand is crooked. We'll have to see how the lines in the little spinner in there. When I aligned it, I just lightly measured it, but then I actually fitted the dimensions because where the pins went through in relation to the little spinner. So that was my thinking behind that. But in so doing, I may have ended up really crooked. We'll see here in a minute. I'm more concerned about the alignment of the pins in the center of the spinner than I am in how the handle actually sets, but it would be nicer if it actually sat there nice and level. And looked like I knew what I was doing. Okay. There's that part of it. I put the little universal joint, the top section, on the motor, so it's ready to go to be mounted. And it will sit right down here like this. I'm just going to assemble this stuff on the floor. I am going to have to make some adjustments to the rubber shroud down there. Things don't want to sit quite the way they should. that's okay. We'll pull that apart and adjust that as time goes on. Our motor will slide right up here. We'll do our coupling here in a minute. And this is the way our upper section will fit on here. Right on there like that. And I think we will go ahead and put our ugly little chain back on here. Just so we do have somewhere we can hang it for right now. That should sit right in there like that. Make sure our bolts are going to line up there. Well, actually they'll have to. Okay, so that goes there. This will mount right up to it. Okay, now we can hook up our universal joint here. Yeah, we're hitting our rubber housing down in there. There's what the unit will look like when it's all, that's what it does look like. We've got wiring to do and it should be running. So I think all in all that's going to be a fairly handsome unit. Now my wiring will come out here, and that's what these holes here along the side are for. I'll bring a power cord in here some way. I was going to mount a box. For right now I'm not going to. We're just going to fix them together. And we'll run a wire down here with, if maybe zip ties, maybe we'll eventually we'll put Adele clamps on there, Abdel clamps on there. We'll run the wire down through here. It'll slide underneath, or it'll go underneath into our channel, and I've got to drill it for a couple of 2 or 3 little straps to hold that up in place and come into our wiring. Well, here we are with the current status of it. We're assembled. We still got changes to make, but I think we've got something that's functional. Ran my wiring down through my little channel. I didn't come out here. I actually ran it on back. Got a wire Abdel clamp underneath. ran it up. For now it's just zip tied up, and we'll change all the wiring up top, of course. But we've got that in. We took just our carriage bolts that we had that were threaded all the way, ran them down, ran a nut on them to set our depth, just cut them off, and then welded them up. Welded them on there. So I think we've got it to where it's functional. So let's see if we can keep from electrocuting ourselves, beating ourselves up with it, whatever it may be. Still lots of little things to be done to it. Have to put shrouding on here. Still have to put nylocks on everything. I guess we'll tighten those up before we try and fire this up. I'd prefer not to have things coming apart on me if I don't have to. The wiring for now is just wire tied out of the way, or zip tied out of the way. I'm not sure exactly how I'm going to run that wiring and how I'd like to have some sort of a little box to run all those in. So for right now we've just got them plugged together. Like I say, everything's subject to change. Rubber shroud down here, it's kind of old and ragged already. I'll probably replace it at some point. I've had to trim it quite a bit, so we'll probably have sand squirting out of it, but there again, I want to run it and see if it's even going to run. So maybe. Well, are we ready? That might work pretty good. Let's go ahead, let me take it over, we'll set it up over the sand hopper, and I'm just going to run some sand through it. I want to know how it's going to act. So we'll come back in a bit here. Crowding a little bit tall, I'm going to have to change my mounting around a little bit, which I'm not sure exactly what I'm going to do there yet, but we'll do something to make it easier to put up there, and probably on some sort of a swivel so that I can swivel it around, maybe lock it in one position, something. I don't know exactly what I'm going to do there, but that'll develop as we progress with this stuff, you know, as it evolves, why we'll do more things. So I've got it here. This is running again. And one of the first things I'm going to have to do is get a shroud around here so I don't have to see that spinning mass there that something may come undone and smack me in the face. So I'd like to see it pivoted to about this point so it's a little bit easier to feed in. Probably put some shrouding back here, probably an extension of the plastic piece. We'll add another piece on there or something just to do that, get our shroud up here, and that'll and then clean up our wiring. So let's dump some sand through it, see what it's going to do. That's what it looks like after it's run through. It does fluff up very nicely. The bigger chunks don't want to feed on down through. Okay, sand's a little bit wet, and I think that may be the main problem with it. May have to add another little slinger up above the main body to initially break that up, but I think the main thing is it's just wet. So we'll let this sand dry a little bit. When I dumped this sand back in, I didn't sift it like I normally would. I just dumped some water on top, so it was a little bit too moist, and it still is. Okay, all in all, I'm pleased with that. That's going to be successful. It'll take some more playing with it to see exactly what's going on, but it does a good job of fluffing it. I think sand, especially after it's been mulled, will probably be a little bit better. But even at that, even if it takes me a little fiddling around until I get it figured out, because the sand's a little bit wet here. And I think I can go through and I'll play with it a little bit more, and see I've got some drier stuff down below. So I'll run some sand through it. We'll see how it acts. But all in all, I'm going to say this is a success. It'll take a little more fooling around with just to get it figured out. But yeah, another good project. So anyway, I'm happy with that. We'll proceed on. I'm going to call this pretty well done. So here's my little follow-up on this. I've been running this for about a half an hour now. And as long as you don't feed it too fast and plug up the chute, even if it's a little bit wet, it does a really good job. The sand comes out really nice. I don't know how well you can see all that, but it does a really good job. So I'm really happy with it. If you try and feed it too fast, if you feed too much material into it at one time, and it's too wet, why it wants to hang on the sides and clog up. Now I may at some point build some sort of a little spinner that sits on top of the main hub there that spins around in a little stirrer. And I may just try and do something with a little clamp-on assembly that I can slide down and bolt on type of thing. But all in all, I'm really, really happy with it. I think it works really well. It was worth the time to do it. And, you know, we'll still make some modifications to it, but I'm going to call this a done deal. This was a fairly fun little project that is going to be really useful for the Foundry. So hopefully you found something a little bit useful there, at least entertaining, watching me fumble along. So if you haven't already hit that subscribe button, I'd appreciate it. And any comments or suggestions, leave them in the comment section for me below. And as always, guys, thanks for taking the time to watch.